think that we just need to continue to get the feedback and ask the questions. There are tax offices all over Lagos State, for instance. I would say for any MSME that has any questions around it, walk into your nearest tax office, ask the questions. For as long as you are paying your taxes, you actually have the right to ask those questions and get more information as it affects your businesses.
You're welcome to the Economy and Politics Conversation. I'm Ottoabasi, Abasiekong. This edition will discuss opportunities for scaling small, medium enterprises in Nigeria, funding and policy enablers. And my guest joining me is Oyindamola Egbeyemi. She's the Director of Programs, Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. It's great to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
To have this conversation.
Pleasure to be here.
As you know, SMEs are very critical to growth of the economy.
Exceptionally critical.
Yes, very critical. So great to have you on this. Let's first begin with the current level of funding of SMEs. I know that sometimes we even categorize into nano and micro, so we don't have even NMSMEs.
Yep.
But the level of funding of SMEs, for me, I see a lot of activities.
Yeah.
So, for example, just recently, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria commended the Bank of Industry for over 600 billion naira disbursements across segments.
Yeah.
But the big question is, how is this impacting the economy? So when you look at, just for example, that kind of disbursements, remarkable. What are those gaps? Because we still need to feel the impact on the SMEs.
Yeah. And I must commend the Bank of Industry for that major disbursement. It's time for the MSMEs in Nigeria because they make up majority of the economy. Small, medium, nano businesses, they are the bane of the economy of Nigeria, of Lagos State, and so on. And historically speaking, MSMEs have been, the demand for finance has outweighed the supply. It has been moving faster than the supply. So it's good to see that financial institutions such as the Bank of Industry, the Development Bank of Nigeria, even the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund are waking up to the need to provide access to affordable finance for these MSMEs. It's very important to note that this is the first need that these organizations have in order to grow and scale. And we need to start to understand what the finance is doing for them, what the impact measure is, what are the peculiarities of different tiers of MSMEs in Nigeria. Very importantly, who are the missing middle? And that is it's a critical area to look at because that is where you have the bulk of them. Find the nanos have access to like microfinance interventions. The larger organizations have access to the Bank of Industry, for instance, and these other, and commercial banks. Yes. But that missing middle is actually one of the areas of focus that we need to pay some attention to because they need access to this funding, but do they have the formalized structure for it? Do they have what it takes in terms of capacity to be able to get what they need to sustain their businesses? So initiatives like this BOI one and others that are showing up in little pockets are great, but a lot more work is required.
Yeah. I even saw the distribution across business sizes, large enterprises, medium enterprises, the small, micro. But again, the big concern is the trickling down effect. I want to begin to see tracking jobs created and the impact on the economy. Yeah. Until we begin to see that is when I can also begin to commend all this intervention. But let's continue this conversation. Yeah. Are there lending conditions that should be reviewed concerning the fact that you just mentioned Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, Development Bank of Nigeria, BOI. We see billions announced, we see interventions announced, but again, the scaling of the nano, small and medium enterprises it's still a challenge. And that's why you can see that the economy needs to really be unlocked.
Yeah, we definitely need the boost. And you'd see that one of the main, I would say, main barriers to accessing this funding is the need for collateral, which we've discussed earlier.
Collateral, yes.
Collateral is, especially for women-led businesses, and the nature of the business environment in Nigeria. I'll speak on Lagos State, but also with Nigeria.
Yes.
Many of our small businesses are like these mom and pop shops. There are many traders. It's what is prevalent in the state. If you look at some industries like manufacturing, they have high potential for labor market engagements because of the scale of work required and the labor also required to do that work. So there we can see impact. But what about those smaller businesses who may not have those structures in place? Those barriers to entry need to be reduced. I think cash flow collateral conditions can be considered because, for example, many MSMEs don't even have land titles. I mean, that's a whole other conversation that we can start, and it will open up a huge can of worms. But just staying on that alone is speaking to what potential is being blocked as a result of one need. And again, I'll still talk about LSTCF because these are some of the things that we discovered are the barriers. But so for that reason, we don't have any collateral requirements for loan applications. What we would ask is for an equity contribution, and then we do the cash flow analysis to see the ability to pay back the loans. What I can recommend for other lending institutions is to look at an asset-based collateralization.
Asset-based collateralization.
Yeah, as opposed to the big ticket of land or property that these MSMEs very likely don't have. Those who make up the bulk of the economy, those who make up the bulk of job creators as we speak. So I think there are creative ways to modify the conditions so that they meet the needs of these people. We find that people within our own pool at LSTF are attuned with our own requirements and they're paying back. So I know that those requirements are supposed to de-risk the request for funding, but if we can find a way to soften it for them and safeguard at the end of the process, ensure that the risk management systems are very well in place. There are more creative and digitized ways to look at things these days. So there are ways to support and still ensure that the repayment occurs as and when due.
There's this quote from President Obama that when you empower women, you empower the nation. I think it's something I agree with because women are very critical. And there's the issue of the women-led businesses.
Yep.
So what's happening? I mean, the example of Bangladesh, the Grameen Bank, how women transformed that country through a lending policy that they kept to. What's happening with the women-led businesses? Yeah. What are those things that must be done to encourage them too? Because they're very critical.
Yeah, women-led is very critical. I'm a product of generations of women-led businesses. Well, generation of entrepreneurs, but my mother is an entrepreneur. Both my grandmothers were entrepreneurs. My great-grandmother was also an entrepreneur. It's very important to understand the value that women bring to the table. And I say it's important to understand, but it's also important for women to understand the value that they bring. Because there's some women who are running businesses and they're not even aware that they're running businesses. By the time you speak to them and they talk to you about, oh, I sold the Bolly example. I sell Bolly every day just so that my children can have an allowance that they can use to buy lunch at school or their stationery at school. It's like, Mom, you're running a business there, but you don't realize that you're running a business. So there's a lot of informality in women-led businesses. Generally speaking, many women are not aware that they're running businesses and they're not aware of the potential they have to drive the economy. And I love the idea and the example you gave from Bangladesh. Is that something that Nigerian women can learn? Is that something that we can translate to some of our ministries, departments, and agencies that are women-focused? The Ministry of Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, for instance. They're doing a fantastic job with supporting women through skills development, through entrepreneurship development. But generally speaking, there's room for that education on formalization so that women can understand that, look, I've learned this skill. How can I actually turn it into a proper business? How can I turn this into a business that is viable, sustainable, and can scale? How can I get the right support to aid that scaling? I need to, repackage, rebrand, just do a few things here and there to make myself presentable to a financial institution if I want to borrow some money to, build the business further. There are many initiatives that at LSETF we've done on women. There's one I'm very, very proud of, which is through the African Business Stories. I met the founder in New York when I went for the United Nations General Assembly, and she said, look, I want to focus on women who are doing great things in Nigeria and who I can showcase on my platform, because they are ready for investment. But again, they may not know they're ready for investment. They may not have the confidence to understand the level of readiness that they are already at least in comparison to men. So that platform provides an opportunity for scale and growth. There's a partnership with Afrexim Bank. There are many scale-up initiatives. We did the first one in Lagos in partnership with her last year. Out of the 21 women across Lagos who were selected, 7 of them were LSETF beneficiaries. Again, which goes to show the quality of our programs, the quality of businesses that these women are running, and the potential for economic development led by women. So many opportunities. I could talk all day about what women could do for the economy if only women had the confidence, had the knowledge, had an understanding of what is available for them.
Yeah, so asset-based collateralization, that's a very important one you've raised. And when you look at the macroeconomic fundamentals today, inflation seems to be decelerating.
Yeah.
Now around that 15, of course, percent mark. We will be tracking the inflation report for January 2026, which will come out any moment from now. We're expecting it. But despite this, interest rate is still high. And you've talked about what you do. But let's talk broad base. I'm not looking beyond LSETF.
Yes.
Generally, what should be that approach in this time? Shouldn't this improve lending, and shouldn't this incentivize SMEs? So what are still the impediments despite these fundamentals?
Yes, honestly, it's good to see that inflation is reducing, but the knock-on effects on interest rates is in the short term is not going to happen. It's not going to happen anytime soon. So how can businesses start to work smarter to ensure that they're still operational and they're still effective? So this is where a lot of education and business formalization, business structuring comes to play, while also taking note of what is going on in the economic environment and seeing how that affects your businesses. There are many capacity building initiatives that these institutions that we've spoken about carry out. So I would just say that for businesses in this environment, 1, be patient, and 2, be very alert, and 3, try to be smart about the way you structure the finances of your businesses. Also look for financial options that are more attuned with your own cash flow projections. They are available. Spoken about BOI, spoken about LSETF, Development Bank of Nigeria, and others. So that alertness is very important. In the short term, I would say the alertness. In the long term, we'll start to see these economic effects favor small businesses. But for now, I'll just say you just need to build your resilience and hope for the best.
Yeah, I know that there's need to, LSETF, Bank of Industry, DBN, you talk of single digit interest rate. The commercial banks are charging terribly, so of course. But the microfinance banks are the ones that at this time need to be restructured to really fund. And that's something that we will discuss further. Or do you want to make a 1 minute input on that? Microfinance institutions. Yes.
Yeah. In terms of restructuring, I know that they have their own goals, and their focus is actually on these MSMEs. Yes. So I think in terms of structure, I can't give too much of feedback, much feedback on how they should go about doing it. But I think that awareness of the needs of these MSMEs needs to be very, very clear, very, very important, because we find that there's a bit of a knowledge gap between the businesses and the lenders sometimes. So it's a matter of adjusting the processes, even the interest rates if possible. I don't know what their own objectives are to suit to suit the market.
Yeah.
To suit that target market.
Yeah, that knowledge gap and the need to understand their needs is very important. While we also see interventions like yours working. Now, you've talked about what Lagos State Enterprise Employment Trust Fund is doing. We don't also have the Tony Elumelu Foundation doing remarkable work too. We have the Caladium Lagos SME Bootcamp doing a lot capacity and providing funding for SMEs. We also have the MSME Africa, several initiatives, Faith Foundation. So recently, the African businessman and entrepreneur, Mr. Tony Elumelu, said that it's not just the funding of SMEs, but the policy environment is also a challenge in scaling the funding to make impact. For you, what is important in ensuring that we have an enabling policy environment that encourages all these clusters to deepen the activities and make our SMEs vibrant for the economy?
You're correct about the policy environment. It's so important. Again, we have the tax reform that is ongoing and that is working in favor of MSMEs. I would still speak on the knowledge gap and the communication gap between policymakers, implementers, and those that would be affected by the policy changes that are being, implemented. There are many quick wins and opportunities that we haven't really leveraged as far as policy implementation is concerned, and that is also because of that communication gap. Are we really speaking to each other? Do we really understand the needs of these MSMEs as far as implementation of the policy is concerned? Do the MSMEs even understand what the policy implications are on their own businesses? And that is why I'm glad to have the likes of Tony Elumelu, MSME Africa, Caladium, Faith, and so on and so forth, to actually bridge that gap. I think that is the role that we as enablers
and the interventions.
Because there's so many MSMEs that are linked to these
over
groups.
40 million in terms of the census of small medium enterprise villages of Nigeria.
So it's a matter of bridging that gap between policymakers and the businesses that are affected. Because even when I speak to some of our MSMEs, they don't even fully understand what the policy, first of all, the policy means at a high level, and then how it affects their own day-to-day. So it's a thing of translating, okay, look, company income tax no longer doesn't affect your own business. So it means that you have more to work with and less to worry about as far as taxation is concerned. So how can you manage your finances to, leverage the opportunities that are available around you, leverage optimize your resources before you get to the level where you become taxable. So it's breaking these down into, the nuggets through which people understand. I have a background in education as well. So I know that sometimes things might be at a high level and you just need to take it down to the level that those who will be using this policy implementation will understand. Also, so that people are not averse to, the tax officer, any other enforcer of policy. So I think there's a lot of work we have to do in terms of communication and education.
The tax regime, how is it so far? We're already into 2 months since implementation. You interact with a lot of your businesses. What is the feedback? And generally, what do you think should be done more? And we have a regulator, SMEDAN. How should they articulate SME development?
2 months in, a lot of education, a lot of questions are being asked. And what we're doing at LSTF is continuing sessions on taxation advisory. Like our session, I think our first session this year was on taxation advisory. I think it's the highest attendance that we've had in a while. And it goes to show that the interest is there. People just want to understand what this means for their businesses. Of course, there's been a lot of feedback around implementation. There's still some concerns around duplication. But I think that we just need to continue to get the feedback and ask the questions. There are tax offices all over Lagos State, for instance. I would say for any MSME that has any questions around it, walk into your nearest tax office, ask the questions. For as long as you are paying your taxes, you actually have the right to ask those questions and get more information as it affects your businesses. But as far as the MSME outlook is for 2026, I think it's still a good one. MSMEs are essentially the lead in economic development for Lagos, for Nigeria. The need to build resilience is definitely one that we always talk about as a country, as an economy, but that potential is still there. we need to understand how we can, work smarter, formalize better. Smedan has started some free business registration initiatives.
In partnership with the CAC, corporate. I really liked that one. I liked that one.
Yeah, with CAC. Even we are trying to work with them on that, spread the word to our own MSME database so that people can understand that, look, you just need to learn how to scale and grow. You cannot continue to remain where you are this year. My own main concern for MSMEs is a short-term mindset. We need to start thinking beyond ourselves and the businesses being our own identity, but rather the business being an enabler of community development, of job creation, of economic development. That mindset needs to shift for MSMEs in Lagos and Nigeria. Otherwise, we'll just continue to recycle the same problems over and over and over again. But I'm glad to have that. Having Smedan, LSTF, and other regulators being enablers in the ecosystem.
Yes, and as enablers, economy is better for it. Thank you very much, Oyindamola Egbeyemi. Very insightful and enlightening conversation. Director of Programs, Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, looking at opportunities to scale MSMEs in Nigeria, funding and policy enablers. The part I liked a lot is the issue of assets-backed collateralization. It's very good. It's a very good idea. And the need for more sensitization. So Smedan may need to work with the National Orientation Agency to create more suggestions to SMEs on what they can do to scale. And then, like I said, Bank of Industry, good disbursements, Development Bank of Nigeria, good disbursement. But let's track those businesses, job creation opportunities, and impact on the economy. That's how we need to see the impact of it. And lastly, like you said, policy. All regulators need to work together with the clusters to scale, to support what they're doing and scale it. And we are better for it as a country. Thank you. And we hope to have you sometime again to discuss the progress.
It's nice to be here sometime soon.
Yes. Thank you very much once again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. To our viewers, if you want to get further insights on this conversation, visit the ProShare website displayed on the screen and follow our social media platforms to engage further. Till we come your way again, enrich yourself with the knowledge of socioeconomic developments around you because it is a wise thing to do. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. Thank you for watching and bye for now.